right. All right. We are back. Oh my goodness, we are back. It's 2026 and welcome to the HEF podcast. Wow, I can't believe I'm saying that. The first podcast of 2026. Man, oh man, time flies. Welcome. Yes, welcome to the HEF podcast. That's the podcast of the Home Education Foundation, which is an organization started by the amazing Brenda Dickinson back in the early 1990s, just after securing a victory push to make home education legal in the state of Florida, to stand on its own, to not have to live up under a private school umbrella, that parents would have the direct right to teach their own children and set their own standards as they see fit. And imagine that it was 1985 when we got reset back to what God intended, which is that children could that parents could raise their own children in the ways that they saw fit, and that the child is not a mere creature of the state. And that was language out of the Supreme Court ruling in 1925, but it took 60 years to finally, especially in Florida, to finally get it directly recognized, that it didn't have to come through a private school entity, that parents could directly just teach their own kids. Imagine that. It's bonkers. We're so thankful for Brenda, and we're so thankful that she founded and started the Home Education Foundation alongside her husband, Craig Dickinson. And we continue this very, very important work today because Brenda was the lobbyist to protect home education freedoms. She was the voice of parents in the Capitol for 40 years, and now she has passed the torch. Today is a very unique day. She has passed the torch, and Jason Crawford, that's me, has taken on the mantle. It's so weird to talk about myself in third person, but I don't know how else to narrate it. I've taken on the mantle, and I've accepted the challenge to walk as far as my legs will take me in the same footsteps that Brenda has been walking, to protect parents' rights, to see the threats coming, even though there may be good ideas, to take a look at them from different angles and look out into the future and go, hey, wait, this could go poorly, and to entangle ourselves into the affairs of politics and lobby for parents' freedoms and parents to be recognized, that your choice and authority is yours to have. So we want to give a special thank you to parents for the free state of Florida, because last year, I can't believe I'm saying last year in 2025, we had the first ever annual donation match challenge in August, and a home education family reached out to us and offered to sponsor this challenge, and that if we could find home education families across the state who would be willing to pledge or raise $6,000, they would match it with a donation of their own. And I'm happy to say it took the whole month, and like the last couple of days it came down to the wire, but I'm happy to say that the parents of Florida united and met that goal, and we're very thankful. So we always recognize them with this, and we'll do it again next year when a new challenge is issued. It'll become a regular thing. We also are very thankful for our top sponsors. Arete is our title sponsor with FPEA, Fisher Precious Metals, and TBHC Group. And we may have a new top sponsor joining this list. I'm very thankful for some of the conversations that we've been having. If you don't know what a top sponsor is, they're an organization that believes in the work that we do, and they want to come alongside us and say, hey, yes, every dollar counts, but our business is dedicated to seeing your mission put forward, and that mission is to protect parents' rights, and they love those freedoms, and they want to be behind it. So there they are as top sponsors. You can see them, and we're thankful to have them. All right, without further ado, we have a special guest, and a very special guest. I'll let you guys decide which is which. Brenda, thank you for being with us this morning again. Day. It is still noon. That's right, when it stops being morning. Thank you for being with us again. How's your day?
It's good so far.
Good.
I'm helping my son move, so lots of packing up and all that kind of stuff. You did that recently, so you know how difficult that task is.
Absolutely.
And I'm so grateful that you were willing to pack up your family from Brandon and move them to Tallahassee to take over my job as the lobbyist and raise your own funds to do the work that we have done for 40 years for home education parents. And, I just would like to challenge parents to continue to support, even if it's $10 a month. A $5 donation ends up being $60 a year. And that's just a cup of coffee that you would give up to donate to the work that we do. And believe me, without a lobbyist in the Capitol, your rights could be taken away or amended. And we've seen a few challenges recently that Jason and I have fought together where in the scholarship programs, they wanted to just require parents to spend the money on curriculum. But we fought hard, and right down to the last week, the leadership in the House came around and saw things our way, which was the result of a lot of walking the halls and talking to a lot of people and asking parents to call their legislators and put pressure on them, because legislators don't know. If they don't home educate and they don't have children on the scholarship, they really don't know what you're spending your money on and how much it is to have the privilege to take piano lessons and violin lessons and buy the instrument for your child, which otherwise they might not be able to have without the scholarship money. So we're just so grateful. But that continued support for Jason to be in the Capitol, guarding your rights and expanding your rights as he did last year with extracurricular activities. And I'm sure Nathan will want us to talk about that a little bit this morning. But it doesn't happen by magic. It happens with a lot of hard work and time commitment to keep these rights active for parents in the state of Florida.
Well, I can attest to that because in walking the halls and speaking with the legislators, I've come to grasp the tone of respect that they've had for the legacy that you have built, and that has kind of transferred over to me in the way that they'll accept me and pull me in and say, "Hey, come over here. I want to talk to you. I want to get your feedback on this," because they appreciate the way that having someone visibly, physically in their office to talk to and speak to and matters. It makes them take what they're doing seriously on a whole new level, and they appreciate the way that you have always been down in the weeds on the details of things and how you'll pull out this little aspect of this or that and give them a new perspective from which to look at it. And I think that you've hit on it. A lot of them don't home educate, and it's very unfamiliar to them. We all believe, I think, a lot. I mean, I would even think that Democrats and Republicans on both sides of the aisle would believe in the freedoms and the importance of our freedoms. We just want to access them or have different ways about the policies that come and entangle afterwards. And you have a penchant for getting down in the weeds and seeing things a certain way and being able to deliver that across that gives them a refreshing way of looking at something that they were seeing only one way. And that's over time, doing that over time, they have built a very large respect for you from that. And it's transferring over to me, and I can tell that. And it's a beautiful thing to see, because I've always been a stickler for the details, and I always felt like I harped on things no one cared about. And it's wonderful to finally be in a place where when I harp on things, it's actually important and people care about it, and there's some appreciation for it. Even on the side whenever we're opposing things, they're like, "That's frustrating, but that's a great point. How do we work through that?" Yeah.
Well, people don't realize how many different issues that legislators have to deal with and how fast they have to make decisions.
Yes.
So when they can have a reasonable expert in there that is pointing out the problems with whatever the policy is, and then providing a way to fix what the problem
Yes.
is, they're very appreciative. But you have to do that one-on-one. And so
Right.
it's, a lot of talking to staff, a lot of talking to the members themselves, and definitely
Mm-hmm.
talking to leaders. And, I want to just say too that home education families can be such a big part of this, because it's the people that the legislators represent, their constituents. They hear from them and they listen. And so when a constituent brings to that we're trying to get across to their own legislators,
She froze.
He froze, Jason.
Yeah, she froze. I believe what she's trying to say. I'm going to start explaining it, and then as soon as I do, she'll unfreeze, and we'll be talking over each other. But yeah, she's absolutely right. And I was wanting to ask her a question as a follow up, but now that she's frozen, we'll take a second and introduce Nathan Groff. Do you prefer Nate or Nathan?
Nathan. My family growing up, it was Nate, but in my adult life, it's always been Nathan. So
Very
I'll
good,
stick with
Nathan.
that, or I'll be confused.
You got it. You got it. So Nathan is actually the newest HEF Connect board member, and we're very thankful to have him on. His expertise, his background, he's had influence in lobbying efforts previously, and so he understands the game and the role, and he's very, very much in tune with what's going on. He's a homeschool parent himself, and we're extremely appreciative to have him, his expertise, on our board. And so thank you for being with us today.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, I'll reiterate, I think for the audience, for what Brenda was communicating is absolutely right, that I think what I saw in my 30-year career working in politics and working on issues is exactly that most politicians, most representatives and senators are not ideologues on all of the issues that they ever see. In fact, very few I ran into are ideologues. In fact, what happens is, especially in Florida, where we have a part-time legislature, which I don't think people can appreciate, that we always say, oh, these politicians are getting rich or this. You're not getting rich being a politician in Tallahassee,
Florida.
Working for the hours that you work, for the little bit of pay that they get, and then the short amount of time frame. And I think when I was active in my career, I think the number of bills were between 7,000 and 10,000 per session that came through. And you take a committee chairperson who may in their day job, they're a farmer, or they're an attorney, or they're a plumber, they own a plumbing company, or they're whatever, and they're a part-time legislator. They are not experts on the 1,000 bills that go through their committees. And then think of all the committees: education, insurance, business regulation, public safety, everything that goes on. And so an effective lobbyist is able to gain trust and is a voice for those particular issues that the senator or the representative can listen to. I mean, I think people think that when they think the word lobbyist, they think of this back room, because it did come out of Washington, D.C. in the Willard Hotel, of where people sat in the lobby and they harangued their senator or their congressman on issues, and they were smoke filled. And I tell my friends, I say, if they ever talk about lobbying, I say, you do realize every individual in the United States has somebody that's lobbying some issue that impacts them on a daily basis. If you own a home, if you drive a car, if you buy something, if you use a credit card, if you home educate, whatever you do, somebody is sitting in a Capitol, whether it's federal or state, advocating on that particular issue. And that's the reality of it. So I think if we in Florida, and I met Brenda, and my wife and I met Brenda years ago, that if we did not have a Brenda Dickinson in Florida
Yeah.
doing what she did, we would not have the rights we had.
Yeah.
Because I can guarantee you the educational the massive boulder of education, whether it's public or private, secondary, post-secondary, whatever, is massive in every state capital, hiring hundreds of people on multiple issues, and we would have been steamrolled. So that's just the reality. I massively appreciate, and I hope everybody appreciates the job you're doing. It's not easy. I don't think they understand there's only so many chicken pot stickers you can eat, going from meeting after meeting after meeting, being invited to the after session, heavy hors d'oeuvres, and it's all the same, catered by the same company, and you kind of get tired of it, but that's what you have to do. It's not the glamorous lifestyle I think people think it is. Maybe it is for the top 1% of lobbyists in the country, but not for the vast majority. So thank you.
Not for me.
For
sure.
And appreciate the intro.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell me a little bit about yourself in terms of, I just want to give you a chance to kind of give your own little intro and tell people, who you are as our newest board member, and kind of give some of your background. How much of it you want to give, you can give, but you don't have to give any real specifics, but let people know who you are.
Sure. So I grew up in Florida. I attended both public and private schools. My parents were both educators. My father's also a retired minister, but he was a principal of a small private Christian school down in South Florida. When I was in elementary school, my mother, when my youngest sister was in middle school, she went back and got a graduate degree, and she taught public high school mathematics, and then ended up retiring from college, teaching college calculus and statistics and things like that. So I grew up in a home that was all about education, but homeschooling, I never had heard the word growing up. It never existed in our mindset. We didn't have cable or TV or anything, so even if it did, we wouldn't have known. So grew up in that environment. And my wife and I, after we were married, we never thought about homeschooling. And then we had some close friends that they had their first child, and we were very close to them. And when the child was about 3, they said, "Hey, we're gonna do homeschooling." And we thought, "What? What do you mean homeschooling? You're gonna invite a teacher in to teach your kids?" That was a typical reaction of of someone that didn't understand. And we watched them for 2 or 3 years, and then my wife said, "You know what? I want to do this." And so she was able to stay home. We've had 4 children. Our last one is in high school, but homeschooled through high school. And our other 3, I have 1 married, and one's a senior graduating in May, should he pass all of his classes this semester, which he has been told he better pass all of his classes this semester. And then I have another daughter who's a sophomore in a state school or an out-of-state school, private school up in South Carolina. So that's the homeschooling intro. My wife was invited in the early 2000s to join the homeschool family board, and so she was a district board member for many years, and still our local school board here in North Florida has not removed her name. She still gets referenced out and answers probably 20 phone calls in the fall and another 15 or so over the summer, tries to help people to navigate. And so she's been a very successful homeschooling mom. We ran a cooperative for a number of years. We capped it at 25 families, and we were a unique cooperative. I'd say that we were a cap. We had a very close-knit group of families. We had over 100 children pretty much every semester. We ran plays and dramas and did. We brought in different people, like my father. He did an extra little class on how to basically do car repair. How to change your oil, how to do things that when I grew up and we actually had, and maybe they still do, but we had shop class and we had auto class and things like that. I taught for many years a finance class, so economics and business. We did I'm boring you, but the last thing we used to run is our own little Shark Tank. So if you signed up for my co-op class, I gave you seed money. We gave you seed money, and you had to start a business, a real one, and then you had to promote it. And if you won the Shark Tank in that semester, you got a little bit more money for your seed money. So
cool.
You talk about 12 and 13-year-olds having crazy business ideas.
Yeah.
I don't think Mark Cuban ever had to deal with some of the ideas I had to deal with. So, but no, just and then we had the traditional, literature and in classes and things like that. So that's the background. My professional career, I was in more finance, and my partners and I ran a pretty successful company. We ran 529 college savings programs in a number of states. So I have a lot of background in investment management and that kind of thing. And so in that role, most of our clients, we had 4 companies, and most of our clients were state or federal entities. So I was like you, Jason. I spent a decade in the belly of the beast, walking the halls. I can tell you the capitals who their rotundas are absolutely uncomfortable flooring and your shoes. And I don't know why. And it was funny because every female lobbyist that I saw never wore high heels. That quickly that everybody was in tennis shoes because, like, I can remember Harrisburg's Capitol Rotunda is all these bricks and they're all uneven, and you stand on for hours at a time waiting for that senator to come out of a committee meeting or come off the floor, and everybody's rushing to him, and you don't want to have high heels on.
Yeah.
So
That's
Brenda
awesome.
can probably appreciate that, sitting in the Capitol place, drinking a cup of coffee, waiting, or sitting in a committee room for hours on end, hoping to get 30 seconds. And so, Jason, if anybody's listening and they don't realize the value of knowing how to communicate, knowing how to write, and knowing how to summarize something in 30 seconds or less, you're probably not good for this job, because you don't get hours, you get 30 to 45 seconds. I tell people you get 2 or 3 points, bullet points, when you're in a committee hearing. And most of the work is done well before you get to committees. And that's what people understand. They get fired up because they hear committees or they hear floor debates. And I would say 90% of, in my background, 90% of the work is actually done with what you do in the halls and trying to make connections and talk to people and get people's trust, and where you can hopefully get more than 30 seconds to walk through an issue. So that's my background. I'd be happy to share more, but right now I'm a volunteer coach and I'm pretty semi-retired. So
you're very good, very good. Now I appreciate you sharing that with me. It made me think. I went ahead and pulled up on the screen for our viewers the Tell Your Story project that we have. We still have it running. It's an ongoing project that we do where home education families can come to this page on our website. It's flhef.org/tellyourstory, and they can upload their own 60-second video. You can shoot them horizontal or vertical. Vertical works a lot better for the story and the reel format that we are looking for, but there's some ideas for blocking here. You don't have to use these, but you can. I was just fascinated. I wanted to share this again because I'm fascinated at the way that you spoke about all the different things that your co-op did and what you guys focused on, and that variety. And I think it's oftentimes people will look at things within the scholarship program and go, well, that's not an eligible expense, or why is this, or they're just trying to do that. And I think oftentimes they just fail to understand that home education families educate out of life, not out of the classroom.
Absolutely.
Out of life experiences.
Can I share one with you, Jason, in a second?
Oh, yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
So this was fascinating. This probably, out of all the things I taught and did, this one class I did impacted me. And when I went into it, I was not thinking too much about it. It was just my wife asked me to do this. I said, sure, I'll do it. And it was really, you can think of it as kind of a home economics, but a modernized one. So they were all 15 and 16. So they were all freshmen and sophomore kids that we had. And essentially, I can't even remember the title of the class, but in the semester, I walked through how much money people spend on hiring somebody to, let's say, install a ceiling fan or install a flat screen TV or mow their yard and all. So we had 12 classes, and I had 3 classroom classes where we didn't do anything. We walked through numbers and taught, more educational things versus practical hands-on. And I brought in an electrician friend of mine, and the church we were meeting at, we had donated 5 flat screen TVs for their classrooms. And I went out and I got some prices from different guys that wanted to charge between $100 and $200 to put a flat screen TV up and put a plug in for you. And so we went over and I taught 15 and 16-year-olds with a licensed electrician, supervising how to actually run a plug up, install on studs, and put a flat screen TV. Those kids they were already starting to think about college. Oh, we can do this in our dorm room. I said, well, before you do it in an apartment or dorm room, you got to get permission. But then teaching them how to mow a lawn and walking through the cost of owning your own lawnmower for 10 years, mowing your yard, or 5 years, and then comparing that to putting it into an IRA, and saving over, and things that I just don't think are taught. I mean, you can go to YouTube and find videos on it, but hands-on in a classroom. And no, I did not teach how to do a checkbook because I think that those will be gone. But practical applications. I remember coming home to my wife, talking to her, saying, I didn't realize how excited the kids would be, because I can't compete with Mr. Beast or Game Boys or whatever. But when they put dollars and cents into something they could physically do, and they saw the multiplication factor of how much money they could save by doing something themselves, it blew their minds. Now maybe these were extra special kids. I doubt it, but it was really fascinating and exciting for me. Out of all the things that I taught was that. But it goes along with the lines of, I don't think folks understand cooperatives and homeschooling environments give you that opportunity that unfortunately a lot of our schools, whether it's private or public, can't really do, based on a lot of the mandates they have, a lot of the regulations they have, and things like that. And so just exciting to do that.
Absolutely. And thank you for sharing that with us, because it does speak to that uniqueness and the power that parents have to influence the success of their own children's lives. It's not just, I think a lot of people think of homeschooling and it's that old myth of like, oh, well, then how are you going to socialize them? And it's like, well, we have no intent to not socialize them as we go out into life and interact with all the people we interact with, and then take all of those learning moments and teachable moments and squeeze them for every ounce of education possible. I don't really anticipate my kids not knowing how to have a conversation, especially since they're not allowed on TikTok, so there's no chance of TikTok brain in my kids at all.
Well, and by the way, for anybody listening, they didn't get an actual grade for that class that I taught. I don't want to say, well, see, this is what's terrible. You graded them and I said, no, we offered traditional classes that they needed for their report cards and for their, and all that, English and literature and all that. These were extra things that we offered as our co-op. And we had 3 or 4 spaces or blocks that we would put these things in. And we had moms and dads that were willing to come in and do this. We had police officers. We have a cattleman that he raises cattle, and, it's all kinds of things and the kids love those. And even homeschooling can get monotonous in subjects, and they love that break going from a literature class where they're having to write, and then they get to, have a backyard ballistics class where they learn how to make miniature blowguns. Did I say that on live?
Maybe. But Facebook or YouTube will edit it out, whatever it can be, I guess. But no, that's a great point in that, you're not trapped in the 4 walls with yard time and a fence. Like when you're done with your core curricula, you're free. You're free.
Absolutely.
The world is open to you.
Absolutely.
And that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Brenda, I wanted to shift back because you got cut off earlier, and I think we finished what you were saying because we knew where you were going with it. But before you fell off, I wanted to ask you a follow-up question, because we were, talking about lobbying and the way that the legislators interact and that kind of rapport and relationship, especially throughout the years and the legacy that you've built and how important those things are. I wanted to ask you, because you announced your retirement last year, and it's 2026, January, and this is when the lobbying registrations are submitted or renewed. And it's the first time in 40 years that you have not had to register as the voice of parents in the Capitol for home education rights. How does that feel? What are you thinking? What are you feeling?
Well, I have several feelings about that. I continued for 40 years because I had not run across anybody that could do the work that I was doing in the Capitol. So when you came along, I began to relax a little bit because I could see that you were going to be able to continue that work and do it in such a good way. So as far as retirement is concerned, I'm still very interested. There's still some issues that I would like to work with other groups and try to help get some things accomplished. There's some complicated issues that you haven't had the opportunity to work with.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to be a lobbyist to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't want to re-register if I don't have to, but there are other groups that are interested in finding a way to help parents with children with disabilities to get more money for their scholarship so that the children can get more services and hopefully improve their position in life. And that happens when the kids are young. If you don't get them when they're young, then many
Yeah.
times you've missed that opportunity. So
Mm.
that's one of the things I'd like to continue working on. You'll be doing the boots on the ground part of that, but IDEA and special needs is a very complicated area of law, federal law, and state rules and regulations. And so you got your hands full with the issues that we're working on now.
Mm-hmm.
And, maybe just kind of keep my fingers in the mix to be able to help accomplish a few of those things that I felt we never got across the finish line. It wasn't a lack of trying.
Right.
They're just,
Yeah. It's just how it is.
yeah, it's just the way it is. So,
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that, and I think it's interesting to see this kind of moment where things are shifting and passing. I don't want to lose sight of the fact that the grind is still the grind, and it continues to go. I was reading in Ecclesiastes to the kids the other day, and it's vanity of vanities, all is vanity, because the moment that you have any kind of rest, the world just keeps ticking, or you have a legacy and you leave it to someone else. I hope that I hope that you don't feel and no one else feels that your legacy has been left to someone who doesn't care. I very, very richly, deeply care. And it's a fight I'm very much enjoying because I see the purpose in it. Not because I love fighting. I do like fighting. But but also
all those
but
swords
also
on your wall. Yeah.
and who knew? But also it's purposeful work, and there's no replacement in life for giving yourself to something entirely that's purposeful. And I believe that that's what home education families do, and that's what I believe we're doing for them as
Well,
well.
you don't get that opportunity but once, and that
Yeah.
opportunity can be just thrown away when you give your children over to someone else, whether it's public school, private school, charter school, wherever you're sending your children, that person is investing more time in your
Mm-hmm.
child than you're able to invest during the hours that the
Yeah.
child is in the learning mode. And
Mm-hmm.
it's hard when you have to do homework when they come home and all of the chores and get them ready for bed and get them to school the next day. You really miss that opportunity to be with your children and to teach them your values and to customize the education to their particular way of learning and interest. Like Nathan said, we have that opportunity and flexibility. That's so important
Mm-hmm.
to do what our children are interested in. They're not all going to be doctors and lawyers. Some
Yeah.
we need electricians, we need, carpenters, we need all of those trades, and being able to help your child do those things is so important. And
Yeah.
you're going to do the best job because you want your child to be successful.
Yeah, I was talking with one of the representatives late recently in the past couple of months, and I just kind of asked them the question, like, what did you do with your kids, and like, what do you have any regrets, And the one thing that they voiced was that they had kind of trusted the system, and they wish if they could go back, they wish they would have been more intentional in not necessarily abdicating all of that out, but being more intentional about saying this is who we are. These are our values. This is who you will be. And I think that that's the kind of it's ever so subtle, but it's that draw of life is hard. It's complicated. It's inefficient. There's a lot of things pulling at us in every different way, and it's so nice to be able to have some entity or someone who will come help with this thing over here and take that off my plate so I can focus on things over here. That's a wonderful feeling. But in this particular situation, if you're not perfectly aligned with your values and your standards, it can be something that comes back to bite you, and that's a real challenge. And this representative was lamenting over that. So I'm thankful, for the freedoms. I'm thankful for the rights that we have, that they're spelled out. We're going to protect them as hard as we can because, man, that's just what we believe in down to our core. And I want to leave that for my kids and their kids to be able to have that power over their choice and that control. So switching gears a little bit here, not a lot, but a little bit, that grind that just keeps going. I want to talk a little bit about what we're looking at coming into this session, because I know a lot of people who are watching our podcast are wondering about that. And I will say that there have been a couple of other bills that have been added to my watch list, at the very least. I haven't decided yet to post on them because I'm still trying to deeply understand them. But some of them center on private school mandates for providing in writing what their academic programs and code of conduct and attendance policies and specialized services and therapies will look like before initial enrollment. And so it's the counterpoint to the transparency that our current leadership at the Department of Education is asking from colleges, where they're saying, hey, put your syllabus online, be transparent, students should know what they're getting into. And so this is kind of it is coming from the Democrat side of the aisle, but they're saying, hey, if that's what you're requiring of public entities, we should be able to require this of private entities too. It'll be interesting to watch and see where that goes. I know that a lot of home education families make use of private schools, especially when it comes to some of the specialized services that they have. So this could have an impact on the home education community. We're keeping an eye on that bill. There's also another bill that was filed that does a lot, and it was filed by Senator Groff, and it primarily targets the Florida college system institutions and state universities for admitting students. It touches so many different things. It's hard to say what the bill does by itself, but it does have some areas of impact on the way home education students might interact with it if they're changing things that are required by these colleges. So we're keeping an eye on that as well. And if you're wanting to see any of the posts, or as things get referred to committees, what the committees are going to talk about and how the bill is going to end up looking, things like that, you should join our Discord. That's flhef.org/Discord. You'll find the links there to join. That's where we do all of our primary education and all of our primary awareness for what things are. We provide links and records. This is not a place where you're going to find rumors. We don't really traffic in rumors. We like to post information, statements that have been said in committee with links to them, or actual statutes, and here's the statute now, this is what's changing in the bill, and kind of break things down and explain them. If you're looking for that kind of helpful stuff, you should really join our Discord, flhef.org/Discord. Among others, we're still also watching the extracurricular bill. So Senator Simon has launched his extracurricular bill for this session, and I believe Representative Abbott and Anderson have filed the House companion, and I'll start by saying that neither of these are like the other. So something's going to happen as these two bills come together. What happened last session was that Representative Abbott's bill got laid down, and they took up the Senate version of the bill to work on that bill, and then it was passed. And that's the one actually that gave home education. It's spelled out. It didn't give them. I'm be very clear about this. Home education students already had the right to participate in sports. And the school that they were zoned for, a school they could choose through open enrollment, which is essentially any school, and then a private school that would enter into an agreement with them. The Senate bill, Senator Simon's bill, currently suggests a rewrite of that statute, and it changes the anchor points for how you access those. So previously it was your zone school or school through open enrollment, and now it'll be the school that you're enrolled in, according to this bill, which no home education student is enrolled in a school. So that becomes it's not necessarily a red flag, but I understand what they're trying to do with it. Rather than making the zone school only the school, they're making the school that you're enrolled in. And then there is a piece of language in here. I'm still seeking clarity from the staff and others on exactly what they read that to do. But it essentially introduces co-ops as a form of athletic participation for home education students, which they already could do according to statute that was already there, but they've preserved it and moved it up in priority. And I'm not sure if the intent here is that co-ops register themselves as FHSAA member schools and therefore, quote unquote, become the school you're enrolled in. And then if that school doesn't, the school that you're enrolled in, if it doesn't have the sport that your student wants to play, then you could seek to play at another school in the district. And so this is, I'm uncertain exactly what they mean by this. And for the last several weeks, I've been trying to chase down, Nathan has pointed out and Brenda has pointed out, these are not the only bills that they work on or the only issues. I believe Senator Simon might be already up to like 30 something bills. So these are definitely stuff where they need someone vigilant to watch and catch all the nuances. At this point, my recommendation, because I understand the problem that they're trying to solve, my recommendation is not to support this bill yet, because I'm unclear on what the changes with the co-op language is going to do. It's not something that we're ready to just completely staunchly stand against, but we need to watch and see what it is they're going to amend and change as these two bills come together. And so the problem that they're trying to solve with these bills is twofold. They discussed in the committee meeting over the fall sessions about coaches and coach pay and the abysmal nature of coach pay, and how it's not possible for the booster clubs and the fundraising to actually help supplement coach pay as they do in Alabama and Georgia, where coaches can get significant boosts in pay because the booster club money can go to help cover some of those things. And that's not the case. I think oftentimes, the numbers that they put up were somewhere around 750 hours of work goes into it, with about $3,000 as the bonus pay for coaches. So it's rather abysmal, and it is something that does need to be addressed, especially if you're trying to attract high quality coaches. There's also counter arguments to, you dump more money into things and then it starts to go wild. So I get it, but there's a track record in Alabama and Georgia that they're trying to follow. So that's one of the problems they're trying to solve, and you'll see that in Representative Abbott's bill. You don't necessarily see that addressed in Senator Simon's bill, but these are the companion bills to one another. So as they come together, you'll see something negotiated across as the background kind of becomes the foreground. The challenge that Senator Simon's bill is trying to address is one in which there are public school students who want to play at a different school, and so they hop out of the public school and they hop into home education, and then they go play at the school that they could play at because that's what home education students can do, is they can choose the school that they play at, and then they go back and re-enroll. Once they've been participating at a school, they're locked into participating at that sport, and they cannot, by law, play at another school. That's specifically stated in the statutes too. So it becomes a game of hopping into home education and using that as a means of accessing another school, and then hopping back into their public school. And part of my brain wonders why anyone would want to do this, but I understand the draw and the competitive nature of sports in and of themselves, and winners just want to win at all costs. So I get it. There is an inherent incentive. The challenge that I see with this is that by this rewrite, what essentially it aims to do, if I'm reading it correctly, which I'm still, again, trying to get confirmation on that, but if I'm reading it correctly, what we're doing is we're removing home education rights and choices and punishing innocent parties in order to curb out what public school students are doing to abuse home education as a loophole for themselves. So why are we taking away the rights and choices of this group in order to close off the abuse that another group is perpetuating? That doesn't work in any other scenario. Look outside of education. It doesn't work in any other scenario. I can't punish my neighbor, because my grass is too tall. The HOA doesn't punish my neighbor for my grass being too tall because, hey, it's your fault. This doesn't work, and it doesn't add up in any which way. However, in doing research, one of the things I uncovered was that in 2016, the immediate eligibility clause that allows a student to be immediately eligible is what's being abused, not necessarily home education rights, but the immediate eligibility. And as I was talking to a friend earlier, I said, I think that we should be entitled to our rights to home educate and the choices that come with them, but I don't think we should be entitled to our lack of patience. We shouldn't be legislating a right to impatience. So immediate eligibility is not something that I'm overly concerned with, as long as there's an appeals process for legitimate reasons why someone should be made immediately eligible. Let's say, for example, if you made home education students not have immediate eligibility for their first year only, this means that all of the long-standing home education students would be fine. They would be completely unaffected. They could still access their rights and choices. They're not switching their enrollment tracks. But if you were a new home education student, which would be anyone coming from public school trying to abuse home education, you would not have immediate eligibility to play anywhere else unless you pass through an appeals process. The FHSAA is one of the governing organizations, so they could help decide what that looks like. And in that, they could make the students and the school they want to play for sign an affidavit stating that they wouldn't be hopping in and around or back, and that there would be serious consequences if they did. That would be one of the things that they could end an appeals process with. I'm brainstorming. But essentially, if you remove immediate eligibility, you remove that linchpin piece that holds together the abuse of the rights. We don't need to remove home education rights and choices. We simply need to make it harder to abuse those rights. And for families who are in it for the long haul, they've chosen this, they're here, and they want to go all in on home education, they're not going to be impacted by this in a negative way. Even if they're coming from another state and they come to Florida, so they're a new home education family in Florida, they would still be able to pass the appeals process by saying, hey, we've always been a homeschooler. This is what we've done.
Jason, my understanding is if even if they're the eligibility, if they move into a district and the district has a school that has that sport, they have immediate eligibility for there. Mm-hmm. The bill that was passed last year simply clarified the same rights going across the entire school district that enrolled students had, but home educated students did not have by their interpretations. So I don't even think it would impact the person that says, hey, I want to withdraw and home educate in their zone school. So it would only impact, and you're right, the impatient if you withdrew and you didn't want to play in your zone school.
Right.
and you would have to wait a year to go outside of your zone school. So
Correct.
that we're talking about in my mind, a very small sliver, but it would impact anybody trying to game the public school system going in and out of home education to public education during sports seasons. And that was not the intent of clarifying the language last term. That was not the intent at all. But again, I like what you said. You don't just goes to the old adage, throwing the baby out with the bathwater, or like you said, the HOA penalizing everybody in the neighborhood because one person doesn't mow their lawn. So the entire homeschool community shouldn't be penalized because a public school parent decided, oh, well, I'm going to get around this and I'm going to just do this, this, and this. So,
Brenda, I see your wheels turning. Go ahead.
That's the same reason that we put into the Bright Future Scholarship that a home education student had to be educated at home in the 11th and 12th grade, because we had students that had a high SAT or ACT score, but they didn't have the grade showing that they really hadn't worked very hard. They had the intelligence, but they were not doing well in their classes. And so they wanted to then register as a home education student to get the scholarship, but bypass the rules for the public school students. So we did do that, and it has penalized a few people, but not a lot of people. So I think parents would just have to make a decision. Students would have to make a decision, prior to deciding they wanted to play at a different school, whether they wanted to home educate in 9th grade or home educate in the 8th grade, and, continue in home education to be able to have that right that home education families have.
Well, and I think Jason said there's an appeals process with what he is looking at, which is more than even what the Bright Futures resolution was. Right. In this, there's actually even an appeals process, Brenda, where the parent can come in and say, this was not our intent. We're kind of caught up in this. And reasonable people can look and say, yeah, they're not trying to game the system. In my mind, in being around, I didn't talk about that when you were off, but I've been a volunteer coach for 16 years and coached both at the public school level and the community level. And we already have extremely tight policies on recruiting and on and seeking to get athletes to jump from one school to the other, this, that, and the other. And if you have an appeals process, any of that behavior is likely to come out in an appeals process. And if it's simply the matter of a parent that they had they found out that the child had special needs between 8th and 9th grade, and they go, okay, that all is going to come out. And I believe that the Florida High School Athletic Association would be reasonable about that appeal and go, okay, this is not I know you're smiling there. But let's assume they would be reasonable and realize this is not a recruiting issue. This is not somebody gaming the system issue. And I remember when we were going through this last year and talking with different folks, I think also now it's definitely more since 2020, but the amount of participation, we all know about Mr. Tebow, but the amount of participation from traditional homeschool families in extracurricular activities has traditionally been very low. The co-op leader, and we talked about that when my wife and I ran a co-op, or she ran the co-op. We had, in 10 years of 100 students a year or more, we had less than a dozen that participated in a decade in extracurricular activities. It specifically sports in the public high school. Now, they participated in community extracurricular and things like that. So the idea that traditional homeschool families of all of a sudden are going to try to start gaming the system and doing this is absurd. It's what I think has happened is somebody has figured out that if if you want to recruit, there's now another way to try to do it instead of just recruiting through open enrollment, which, by the way, has always been there. That's what's lost in this, I think, is that if you were an unethical coach and you had a school that was in a different zone than another school, and that kid was zoned for that, but he was a good, you could go, hey, just go in the open enrollment portal and transfer over here. Totally legal, totally allowed to do that. And then, you know, that goes on every year. I know for a fact that goes on because I've known parents and I've known coaches. So, you know, that was all that, and that's still, no matter what fix, Jason, that you look at, that can still occur, and that should not be lost in these discussions. That well, you're going to do this, but oh, by the way, let's just go back to there's no open enrollment, there's no school choice, there's only your zone schools. Then everything will be fair. But then we'd have another outcry and uproar.
Right.
So you're going to have people trying to game the system, but you don't. You know, you can't legislate morality, and you can't legislate good moral ethics. You can have penalties, and you can have, you know, actions that occur. But if somebody wants to do something that's wrong, they're going to try to find a way to do it.
They're going to game it.
And
that was one of the things that I raised. What you just mentioned there was one of the things that I raised, that, you know, public school students can still transfer. They can still do all those things. All of those unscrupulous things that you're suggesting can already still occur. But what you've done is just gutted home education choice and freedoms without any gain, because all of that stuff can still happen. So deal with the major issue, like deal with the exact issue, deal with the linchpin that holds together the abuse, which is the immediate eligibility. Just make it harder to access, make it still available if there's an appeals process. And just for clarity, anyone listening, like, the appeals process is something that I have invented. It's an idea that I threw out there. It's not in the bill. So if you go read the bill, you're not going to see that in the bill. We're talking about right now, for clarity, we're talking about ways in which we would suggest fixing the bill, not necessarily what the bill actually says and does. So be very clear to understand the difference between those two. The bill in its current state, what it suggests doing is making the school that you are enrolled in be your school that you have to play at. And then if that school doesn't have the sport that you want to play, you could play at another school in the district, and then it tiers outside of the district, etc. And since home education students don't have a school that they're enrolled in, that then begs the question, how would they do it? So they bifurcate home education students into either their athletic co-op or the school that they're zoned for. And so then the decision tier tree kind of tiers up from there for them as well. And so that's a big shift in the choices and freedoms that home education students have historically had. And that's why we're suggesting that this is not necessarily a bill that's in favor of home education rights, and they're trying to fix a public school student abuse problem by removing home education student rights. And that's a non-starter for us.
But let me just say, there's already an appeals process through the FHSAA, but typically it's for age students, or they want to play an additional year of sports. So you'd have to be careful that you sort of designate in the appeals process what they're able to
what they're appealing.
Correct.
Because I think also, like, you can also appeal. I know if you're in an athletic competition and there was you get thrown out of a game for something like that, they can go through an appeal process. All of those are defined. So and if this is the solution that we recommend and would push, we would have to make sure that would be defined as an appealable item, which is my eligibility is not granted, but I am appealing my eligibility due to these circumstances.
And as the home education member on the Public Liaison Advisory Committee with the FHSAA, I get to sit in on those appeals and hear what they are. And you're exactly right. That is what they entail. I do think that we could draft a appeals process that hears these issues and gives them a decision tree on how to vet them and help with that. But cross that bridge when we come to it. We got to make sure this bill doesn't take away our rights first. So,
Right. Right.
Correct.
Doug in the comments here, Doug Williams says, "Congratulations, Jason and family on new Christmas baby. God bless you all." Thank you, Doug. He also says, "This issue is almost exactly what we experienced here with our daughter. Thanks to Jason and Stassi, the issue was put to rest and almost immediately." I remember it differently, Doug. That was quite the fight. But I'm very thankful for Stassi and his team. And if you guys are unfamiliar with him, you should definitely check out our last podcast, which is either episode 118 or 119. I think I may have mislabeled it in a post-baby lack of sleep stupor. This is definitely podcast 120, but that's just because I have picked that because I couldn't remember which one the other was. So it's either 118 or 119. But you can find it on YouTube and Spotify. It's our last of 2025 special guest, and he was our special guest. And yes, he's got a great team, very instrumental. What a great leader to have at the DOE, and he has been very helpful. I still don't think that they realize exactly how many of these issues we do see. I think that they view the school hopping as the bigger problem, where we view the lack of acceptance of home education students' rights as the bigger problem, because that's the one that we're constantly fighting. That battle is a constant fight in multiple counties. It just still in this weird place where persona non grata, people are married to the system, or they see these outliers as somehow opposing people, and we just want to teach our kids our own way, but still have them, involved in extracurricular activities. There's nothing wrong with that, and we have rights to that by law. And but we find people who, in various different parts of districts, in personnel or employment, just oppose the involvement of home education families, and we oftentimes have to go and deal with that. And so they'll intentionally, well, I might not say intentionally, they'll read a law a certain way and think that they can deny access, and so we'll go and entangle and have these conversations. They can be long and drawn out, and I don't want us to end up in a position where that's even harder to do. So we're really keeping an eye on this bill, and that's a given. So if you want to follow it and see what's happening with it, again, I'll plug the Discord, flhef.org/Discord. Hop into the Discord. Each bill that we're following in the legislative updates channel, you're going to see a whole new thread for each bill. And as we go to committee meetings, those threads are going to get updated. You can chime in if you have questions or you have things that you want to say. You can also chime in to those. It's not just information that we put out. Those are discussion threads. But I like to try to keep the bills with their own threads. That way, you can easily follow the separate conversations. Some of these bills may die in committee, and so then I don't, want that important thing to get lost. But it may not become, it may not be generating a conversation the entire time. And so then the ones that are very hot, just want people to be able to easily navigate that. And so if you go into our Discord, you should join our Discord to see what I'm talking about. It'll make more sense if you could see it yourself. Brenda, thank you for being on with us today. And it's very important to closing out this topic. I just want to say it's very important to not knee-jerk yet that we're watching this bill, the House bill. This is why I started with the House bill and the Senate bill are not even close to identical. They're actually attempting to solve two different problems. And so the closer that we get to bringing an awareness to this issue and having these conversations, I'm hopeful that some of these changes might get tabled to try to conquer them later, after we can have workshops and go into the details on the nitty-gritty of these issues. And keep in mind, though, that this is going to probably move very quickly, and I'm not sure what this session holds, because from what I'm understanding from many, this is that we're in another situation where the Senate and the House are not in alignment, to say it as neutrally as possible. And so this session could end up going to June as well, even though it starts in January. And in that case, many, many, many bills just get X'd if they don't make it. If they don't make it and they are done by a certain point, they just get thrown off, and it's good luck next year. So we're going to keep an eye on all this, and we're going to keep you guys updated. If you want to follow and you want to know, you have a place for that. So just want to wrap that part of the conversation up with that. Nathan, thank you for being with us today. I hope to have you back more often. It's great to have another guy in the room.
And somebody with experience.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I appreciate your wealth of
Well, I
of
appreciate
experience.
you. I appreciate you asking me, and next time I'll dress a little bit nicer so I can have a video for the folks that didn't know. Today was a barn working day, so
It's all
I
right.
didn't want to. You were outshining
True
me by
homeschool
far.
form.
But thank
quite
you
all
for
right.
having me, and Brenda, I want to express my thanks and our family's thanks to you. I mean, the lives that you have changed, you and your husband have changed, you'll never know through your efforts. So
Yeah, I could
Thank
echo
you.
that. Yeah. Brenda, you always get last word before we close out the podcast. What would you like to say?
I just would like to say thank you so much for taking the reins and for reading those bills every single day and giving me some freedom not to feel like I have to be in the Capitol every day.
Yes,
And,
ma'am.
it's amazing how much time and effort goes into this. But, I know that we're affecting lives, and that's why
Yeah,
it's so important to continue doing what we're doing.
100%. All right, I'll end with that. Want to end with another thank you to the Home Education Foundation and, sorry, the free parents of the free state of Florida for helping the Home Education Foundation as their own top sponsor. And we also want to say a special thank you to our other top sponsors, Arete, FPEA, Fisher Precious Metals, and TBHC Group, as is our custom. And without further ado, we're going to cue this wonderful music that was made specially for us by a home education dad in the free state of Florida. Very skilled. Enjoy Alex's handiwork. And we'll see you guys next year. Next week. Happy New Year. Yeah, and enjoy it.